It is a group of Democrats who unfortunately seem to think that poor people are stupid. I don't think poor people are stupid. I think they have agency, and I think to have them register twice a year for these benefits that is not a burden.
Let's watch Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent smack down CNN's data bash on Medicaid requirements. Let's go.
President Trump's big, beautiful bill is now law. And as he hits the road to sell Americans on that new law, the president is also facing another deadline this week. More than 100 countries have only 3 more days to meet the deadline he set to make tariff deals. Here with me now to talk about all of that is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. Let's start with the new law and who it helps. The Tax Policy Center says the majority of the tax benefits will go to Americans making $217,000 or more a year. The Yale Budget Lab says the richest Americans will see their income rise by nearly 2%. The lowest earning Americans will see their income drop by 3% when factoring in cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. You argue that the benefits will really be aimed at the middle class. How does that square?
Dana, first, let's have a look at the Yale Budget Lab, because I was looking at their findings, and this week I actually went on their website. They're all ex-Biden officials, so I think we can discount everything they say. I'd encourage all your viewers to look at the composition of both the board and the staff, and it's just not right that what we have here is a middle class and working class bill that we are going to see wages accelerate, and we are going to see, just as we saw with President Trump's first tax bill, we are making permanent these tax cuts. And what happened in 2017, 2018 was the highest wage earners went from paying 37% of all taxes to 45%. So that's going to be permanent now. So permanently, the highest 10% will pay a higher percent of the taxes.
I should say that, taking the Yale Budget Lab aside, there are Republican senators who are worried about affordability and who this all is going to affect.
Look, I think affordability, safety, and growth are the 3 things this bill is going to generate.
One of the tax cuts that are in here are for, and the president talks about them a lot, are on tips and overtime. Mm-hmm. Those are temporary. Why not make those permanent? They're only 2025 to 2028.
This is a big part of President Trump's agenda. So, we have what I call parallel prosperity here, that Wall Street has done great. Now it's time for working Americans to do great. And this is President Trump's agenda, so we've got it in for the duration of his term. And we will see if the next administration wants to do that.
And just talking about the affordability, how is making cuts on Medicaid programs?
Well,
how does that, and how it affects the people who are at the lowest ranking when it comes to income, how does that help with the affordability crisis in America?
Well, first of all, that affordability and saving Medicaid, let's separate those. And only in D.C. is a 20% hike over 10 years a cut. So,
yeah, this is a fantastic point. It's something that we talk a lot about this on the show, about the anatomy of the left wing and the liberal media and how they shape and frame things. All we've heard about for the 6+ weeks that this bill has been debated is people are getting kicked off Medicare cuts, healthcare cuts. They're not cuts. The program has been expanding rapidly for decades. This bill is now weaning that expansion down. It's still growing, just the money that's going into Medicaid next year, the year after that, under this big, beautiful bill is more money than was in it the previous year. It's just increasing at a lower rate. So right off the bat, all this framing of, hey, people are getting kicked off their health insurance. It's people who would have gotten it at an increased rate. We have to remember, Medicare, when it was first started, was a program for the sick, the elderly, and like pregnant people. It was not a plan to put essentially what Bernie Sanders and some on the far left have coined the term Medicare for all. It was not meant to be a universal health care program. It was meant for the most vulnerable people in our society. And now it's at the point, it's ballooning to the point where it will be insolvent if we can't fund it. And we can't fund it if the increases just keep rising. The rate of increase rises year after year. And yet CNN, the MSNBCs of the world will tell you, oh, they're cutting it. They're taking money out. They're not taking money out. They're just decreasing the rate at which money goes in. Good, important point that Treasury Secretary makes there.
Medicaid funding will go up 20% over the next 10 years. The people who Medicaid were designed for, the pregnant women, the disabled, and families with children under 14 will be refocused. The able-bodied Americans are not vulnerable Americans, so a work requirement or a community service requirement, that's very popular with the public, and many state programs have that now.
It might be popular, but it's not what the president promised. The president promised that there would not be changes to Medicaid benefits, and putting a work requirement is, by definition, a change to benefits.
No, there are no change in benefits. There's a change in requirements to get the benefits. And what we are doing, we are bringing back manufacturing jobs. We are bringing back working class jobs. By securing the border, we have already seen working class wages move up. So we are creating jobs. People can get off Medicaid and get a job that has good health care benefits, Dana.
In theory, that works, but I'm sure you've seen and heard a lot of the concern, including and especially from Republicans who are the most vocal in Congress, about the fact that those work requirements are going to be very cumbersome to actually prove, and it will inevitably force the people who need that Medicaid coverage off the rolls.
What Dana Bash said there is a lie. Republicans are not the most vocal people in Congress about work requirements in Medicaid. There are one or two Republicans in Congress, Tom Tillis, senator from North Carolina, who came out and said that he was worried about what this bill would mean for the working class people in his district, and then promptly retired, essentially, said, I'm not running for re-election. Now, his claim was that if this bill passes, which it did, he won't be able to get reelected. I think maybe he just wasn't that great of a candidate, wasn't super popular, and saw his Jeff Flake moment and took it. Fair enough. More power to you, man. But to say that Republicans are the loudest voices in opposition to instilling work requirements, it's a flat-out lie. You can take a list of Democrats. Every Democrat is against it, vocally, loudly, saying it more often, as opposed to the one or two Republicans who say it here and there. It just... Let's call a spade, Dana Bash. That was a lie.
Well, first of all, it's the Republicans are not the most vocal on this.
Oh.
It is a group of Democrats who unfortunately seem to think that poor people are stupid. I don't think poor people are stupid. I think they have agency, and I think to have them register twice a year for these benefits, that it is not a burden. But these people who want to infantilize the poor and those who need these Medicaid benefits are alarmist.
Yeah, but
I also, just an aside, to be opposed to people having to register, having to put into the system, hey, I'm a recipient of these benefits, is also to be opposed to the idea that we shouldn't let fraud, waste, and abuse run rampant, because Medicare and Medicaid fraud are pervasive. And part of the reason that people are able to get away with it is because the system is a mess, is because it's disorganized, is because we do have a way to track, but there are cracks. People slip through the gap all the time, and work requirements or community service, which is incredibly generous, just let people serve at a soup kitchen and they get free healthcare. Again, and Dana Bash even admitted it there. Scott Bessent alluded to it. It's a popular plan with Republicans and Democrats.
my impression of the Republican Party is that historically you've wanted to cut through the red tape and not create more red tape. But I do want to move on because
no. But we've also wanted to put in work requirements, which somehow that was very popular under Bill Clinton, was popular under President Obama, and this Democratic Party blew out the deficit in 2020, and they never want to bring it back. but work requirements even poll well with the median Democratic voter, maybe not the fringe.
Let's talk about tariffs. President Trump gave countries a 90-day pause on the sweeping tariffs he put in place back in April. That pause ends in 3 days. What happens on Wednesday?
We'll see. I'm not going to give away the playbook because we're going to be very busy over the next 72 hours. President Trump's going to be sending letters to some of our trading partners saying that if you don't move things along, then on August 1st, you will boomerang back to your April 2nd tariff level. So I think we're going to see a lot of deals very quickly. And, Dana, we're going to send out probably 100 letters to small countries where we don't have very much trade. And most of those are already at the baseline 10%.
Well, you said August 1st. Do you mean what's going to happen in August?
So the countries will get a letter saying that if we have not reached an agreement, then you will go back to the April 2nd level.
Starting when? On August 1st?
On August 1st.
Okay, so there's basically a new deadline.
It's not a new deadline. We are saying this is when it's happening. If you want to speed things up, have at it. If you want to go back to the old rate, that's your choice.
When you say that there's going to be a lot happening over the next few days and you don't want to give me the playbook, is there a playbook?
Sure. The playbook is to apply maximum pressure. We saw that the EU was very slow in coming to the table. 3 weeks ago on a Friday morning, President Trump threatened 50% tariffs, and within a few hours, 5 of the European national leaders had called him, and Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the EU, was on the phone, and the EU is making very good progress. They were off to a slow start.
The president said some countries could end up with tariffs as high as 70%. Which countries is he talking about?
I think you'd go back and look at the April 2nd levels. But again, none of those are major trading partners. There are 18 important trading relationships that account for 95% of our deficit. And those are the ones we're concentrating on.
Are you close to any deals before Wednesday? I know you're talking now about August 1st, but where are you on
we are
deals?
Close to several deals. As always, there's a lot of foot dragging on the other side, and so I would expect to see several big announcements over the next couple of days.
Can you name names?
I'm not going to name names because I don't want to let them off the hook.
Okay. When you talk about these letters and you talk about kind of the 90 deals in 90 days, or at least the president did back in April, so far that we've seen 3, and they're not concrete deals the way that we're used to seeing trade deals. They're frameworks. Mm-hmm. The president has a reputation, self-described deal maker. So why haven't we seen the kind of deals that he promised in the last 90 days?
Again, he didn't promise this, and when we send out the 100 letters to these countries, that will set their tariff rate. So we're going to have 100 done in the next few days. And
but that's not a deal, that's a threat.
No, that's the level. That's the deal. If you want to trade with the United States, this is.
But that's not a negotiation. That's just
many of these countries never even contacted us. So
I wanted to do the Medicaid thing and went into the tariffs there just to kind of break down the reflexive opposition that CNN has. Dana Bash kind of scrambling there, looking for a way to get into combativeness. Say, well, you're not making deals. Oh, well, that's not a deal. That's a threat. Like, it's so fascinating the way that they're reflexively opposed. Instead of evaluating the information she's getting in real time, she's shuffling through papers going like, how can I spin this? How can I make this? Oh, Trump's bad. Oh, well, he promised to do these deals. He didn't promise deals. Oh, well, you only have frameworks. They're not deals yet. She's getting very simple information from a primary source in Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying, we're changing the rate. We are setting the level by August 1st with these countries. They can come to us with a deal if they want to, but we are taking back our power in trade negotiations. We are reducing our trade deficits. There are a lot of follow-ups to those questions in terms of economics. Her interest was in saying, well, Trump is bad. Why? How is he bad? Tell me why Trump's bad. Anyway, folks, once again, we broke it down, the anatomy of the liberal media. If you enjoyed this, please do us a favor. Like on YouTube, like on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.